Everybody, let's please welcome Manah Khalil. Yes, absolutely.
Good morning. How you guys doing? Got your caffeine shots this morning? Okay, it's very important for what we're going to be talking about, making sure that you're set up today to succeed in learning as much as possible. So want to make sure that you have all the prerequisites. Talking about culture. It's a bit chilly in here. First time in a few years that I had to have like push-ups, kind of like to warm up. So I'm going to start like introducing myself. So my name is Manah Khalil. I'm the IT Application Security Director. We have a small team at Verizon that is part of the IT organization. We focus on security, application security specifically. Probably unlike other organizations, we're not situated or placed under the CISO org. We're in IT, but we're getting the security. We're getting to be the security advocates. We're the representative, in a way, of the CISO in the IT organization. And in those last few months, I think, about 24 months, we've established this team to try to consolidate all the security teams, functions into one team to make sure that all the various organizations, Verizon Wireless, Wireline, Enterprise, they're all sharing the same practices. Earlier, we had kind of like a siloed security program in each organization, and we felt that it is time to make sure that these practices, as we move into DevOps, all the things, the cloud, that we have common standards, common understanding of application security, threats, all of this, and share it across the board. So people would start asking, like, so how are you different from what the CISO organization have been doing all along? It's been already established. We have compliance office. You know, in Verizon, we have a lot of customer data, and many times, hackers, they find in our system like a big honeypot. So we're constantly trying to upgrade our systems, upgrade our security to make sure that none of this information is leaking, none of our systems are vulnerable for attacks. And then comes the CISO organization trying to look at our standards, our best practices, and most of the time, they're auditing us. And this is where I always kind of like try to put it in simple terms, the analogy of why we are there in the IT application. We try to compare ourselves to H&R Block. We're the accountant sitting helping the developers as opposed to the CISO organization that are probably they don't like this term, but I compare them to the IRS. The accountant is there to help you get your work done, be ready for that awful audit that somebody's going to go and say, did you file your taxes on time? Did you hide something somewhere? Did you sweep your dirty security reports under the carpet? And typically in organizations, you would see, you talk to somebody from security, you're going to run away. You're going to turn 180 degrees and say, I don't want to even say good morning to you because you're going to ask me about where my vulnerability today stands. And what we ended up doing in this team, actually be the friends, the advocate for the IT application teams. They're coming to us, asking us, can you help me get my security posture in place? Because I'm not trying to do an audit. I'm not trying to give you a checklist and tell you, go do 1, 2, 3, 4. Look, you want to get into a better position. You don't want to see your information on the news every single morning. We're going to help you get there. And this is kind of like our roles in my team. So after a long time of having these silos established, we started a journey probably 3-4 years ago overall in the DevOps with Ross's team and other teams around the technology services to try to move everybody into DevOps. We're moving legacy applications that haven't seen any changes for probably 10, 15 years, big monolithic applications into now more agile, user-friendly, quick turnaround, and more importantly is to be able to meet our competition, to have that flexibility of shipping new functionality and features without having to worry every single time. I need 7,000 hours to build you the next big billing system. We want to try to do it in chunks. As we find features, we want to grow. We want to be able to go try out something, fail, move it out, bring something else. So we started our DevOps journey. Then we wanted to go be also technology aware, and where we have our biggest operating cost is in operating our data centers. And we've had many of these. So in the last few months also, we've been significantly pushing towards migrating away from data centers towards the cloud. So we have teams that are working on, right now, looking at how can I move my traditional application from a data center to be able to go put it now on the cloud and still make sure that is safe, secure data for customers. It's well safeguarded. There are policies in place that can, in effect, be those various layers. If something fails, you fall back onto another layer that makes it hard for you to commit or make any mistakes. And then this is where my team is getting basically our marching orders. While we want to make sure you have the right shareholder value in place, in mind, you're trying to reduce your operating cost, you're trying to make sure that the business requirements are delivered and you have established a good relationship with your businesses, we have still to focus on how can you make sure that your application is always safe and secure. In many cases, you go train your employees and you tell them, here's what you need to do, here's what you should never do, and here's a gap, let's work on it. But face it, today in most of the application that you're building basically a Lego from different pieces, open source, from third-party components. You build that extra secure system, and then at the end of the day, you put it on an operating system or in a database that itself has vulnerabilities. So you got to keep up, make sure that you're aware of what is happening every single day. Is Apache disclosing a known vulnerability? Is your Oracle database up to par in terms of patching? Are you going to wake up one day to try to fix the mistakes of others? So you have to make sure that it's not just your development, but it's your overall environment. And then a big part of this is to be able to respond to these emergencies and to this changing environment. So if the developers basically say, look, I don't have any vulnerabilities today on my plate, I'm done. I'm off to go do something else. I want to ship this and never look back at it. Give it to sustain engineering. They'll take care of it in production. And I'm going to go build the next cool app, put it on the market, right? Well, it doesn't work this way. And the reason is people, they have to feel ownership, that you built it, you own it, it's your problem till the end of days. And this is where the culture is important. So we have basically, as companies, all established our own corporate culture. And one thing I did, like for this slide, is I wanted to go look at what people think about corporate culture, not what I try to do or understand or interpret. So I went and did a simple thing. Just take a whole bunch of articles, Google corporate culture, get these articles, put them in one notepad, filter some bad keywords, something that you don't want to put and be embarrassed on a public slide, and then take that and put it in a word cloud software. And you're going to see automatically these important keywords surface to the top. And in our corporate culture, we have something called known as the credo. Basically, stuff that you have to believe in if you're working in our company. Like we're a big customer advocate, and that we run towards the crisis. We never run away from the crisis. And a big example is all the various natural disasters, including now the unfortunate one in Houston. where our teams, they have to be on site right after the situation has stabilized a little to go back, establish wireless communication, make sure people who are in need of medical help can actually pick up the phone and dial 911 on their wireless phones. So we never shy away from any crisis. And this is a corporate culture that we believe in. And our employees, whether you're in a business, you're in IT, you're a technician, you're in a call center, you have to be able to stand behind that culture to be able to deliver software. And then we took this big corporate culture and we fine-tuned it in a way to be our IT DevOps culture or agile development culture. Because in IT, you want to do some customization in a way. Take what you all believe in and then go and say, okay, what is now the differentiation between me in IT versus me in the customer-facing organization, like the technicians that drive to your home to install your set-top box. You don't want to have somebody that is rude. You want to listen to your customers, right? So each one of these organizations has its own specialty. And then again, I did the same exercise. I went and looked up on Google, IT DevOps culture, IT agile culture, development culture, waterfall, development cycle, et cetera, et cetera. And I came up with all these basically nice colored terms that kind of like validate what we all believe, that you have to have something that is measurable when you're talking about agility, when you're talking about DevOps. Otherwise, there is no meaning to go do that transformation if you're not going to be able later to go measure it and see if it's really making any difference. You spend time, money, effort, you talk to individuals, and you send them to training. A lot of people in security nowadays, they want to do the CISSP certification. It costs a lot of money, SANS certification. At the end of the day, is it translating in better security? Are your processes really reducing your cost, making it ready for you to ship software anytime you need? We used to ship and deliver all our releases on Saturdays, the third weekend of a month of the release cycle. Guess what? People complained that next day they cannot be ready to go to church because they spend the entire night from 12 to 2 trying to release the code to production and then run their health check and then monitor the next day customer calls to see if we have anybody not able to log into their accounts. It became detrimental because people want to do the right thing. We keep talking about work-life balance. And then if you're really not allowing your employees to enjoy that weekend with their families every third week of the month, you're going to be driving your strong, good people out. So we have to stand in IT management behind what we believe in. If we truly believe behind work-life balance, I need to make sure that you are capable of not having to worry about somebody calling you after you spent your entire evening doing that release to call you in the morning and say, customers cannot log in. Now I want you to forget about all your functions on Sunday morning and head to the office and troubleshoot. So DevOps came to the rescue. We had to be able now to decide that at any given day in the week, if we have to release, we should be able to release. Because we have flexible processes that can allow us to go build, to go run our regression testing, to do all the release criteria, and push to production and not have to worry. So we ended up moving our release from a Saturday night now officially to a Tuesday. But then again, people complained. Because guess what? In order to ship on Tuesday, some managers were going to call out their employees on Sunday and say, are you ready for that release on Tuesday? And that created also additional frustration because still I can't leave and take a road trip over the weekend and just be in the office on Monday, 9 a.m. You had still to work on the weekend. So now we're moving it into Thursday. It took some trial and error. But because we believe about building something that can set up our teams to succeed, we had to make these decisions. So you went and did everything right. You gave the teams the time to go adjust and understand what DevOps is. And you spent your money on training, you increased the funding to IT, and then you got all the nice tools. You licensed every single software you heard about, and you give it to the teams. Do you expect now the transformation to happen without any hiccups? You still have to make sure that the human element now is there. And thus, basically, the title of my presentation, trying to figure out the root cause of culture and how it impacts this transformation. Specifically, what my team is focused on, which is secure by design. We don't want to build software and later go fix stuff. In order to build secure by design, that mentality, that culture has to drastically change. We have to have people that are aware about security right from the get-go. Day zero, when you sit with somebody and they start talking about requirements, do you build secure designs, secure architecture? When you move it to development, are you going to go code without any new vulnerabilities introduced into your code? Are the test teams ready to build that test coverage that ensures your application is very well tested and will not be hacked the next minute it's in production? And this is probably more important for startups. Like, we're a big organization. We have tons of people that are doing this stuff. Imagine now a small startup that the next day they build this small, cute app, they put it on the App Store, they get hacked right away. And even worse, if they had collected some personal information, like even if it's like a health app, tracking how many steps you walked today and where you live, and this information made it out. That's embarrassing. You're going to lose your customers right away. So there are more challenges for the startup, and therefore, when you're trying to use all these prepackaged, available, open source, libraries, everything, there's still a concern. Are you thinking about security first? You don't want to release and later pay that price. So what's the problem now? It's not easy to know if you're heading in the right direction. There are easier things to do when you're doing software development. Tons of dashboards are out there that tracks, okay, how many builds am I doing? How many bugs am I generating? How many lines of code I've introduced? And if we continue to try to focus the teams on, hey, this is your good to-do list. Look at this and try to zero out everything. Don't leave any work item in your queue, in the backlog. You still don't know if you're still doing the good right thing or the bad thing, right? We have to be able to measure culture and its effect. And this is not easy if you think about it. But then if you take those same KPIs that you've established and you look closer at it, you might be able actually to find indicators that the culture is changing. So what kind of indicators? For instance, if you think about how many builds you're generating every single day in your CI/CD pipeline, are you looking at how many people are accessing that report that comes out to see, is this data that you generated, is it really used? If you look at just how many people are clicking on that URL that summarizes the result of the build, like how many code scans have you done? Did you find any vulnerabilities? Did you find any warnings? Did your Sonar Cube result in any significant issues? Check who's reading these reports. Then you will know if your teams are really trying to understand what they've caused. They wrote the code, and they checked it in and everything, they compiled, but they never looked at that report. You know what? Save the processing power. Don't even do it. Don't even run those scans if nobody's using it, right? That's a KPI that tells you, are you doing the right thing or not? In other cases, you see that the developers are still causing the same type of problems, like how simple it is to avoid cross-site scripting. If you continue seeing every single week, I have the same developers writing code, fire and forget, they check it in, the build compiles, it gets scanned by Fortify, check marks, or your favorite tool, and you still see they're causing cross-site scripting. Why? Right? That's an indicator that there is a problem in the culture. Now, you don't care whether it's a 1 issue or 100 issues. The fact that there are issues, that's the indicator you need to look at. So what we did was build something called the developer dashboard. And if you look at this, this is kind of like a nice colored view of what we've included in the developer dashboard. We source tons of information from all the various systems that we have, but we de-emphasize the numbers. We really don't care about what is the value on that chart. What we care about is the actual pattern itself. And when you look at pattern, you start to understand why you have to ask these questions. And these are the good indicators of the culture. For instance, if you're seeing these significant spikes in the vulnerability density, you gotta ask the question, overnight, suddenly, your vulnerability density tripled or quadrupled. Why? Did somebody just drop 1,000 lines of code with all these vulnerability? Where is the process broken? Is it a training issue? Is the developer really not caring? Is the manager not emphasizing the importance of security by design, right? So these are questions that when you start looking at the exact same KPIs that you have today, but look at the pattern and ask why, you're gonna start to find that all of these are great indicators of a culture change. So in our dashboard, we took information from, we use Fortify for code scan. We took the information from Fortify. We took information from Web Inspect that we use for basically dynamic application scan. We scan the URLs. We took information from our LDAP, the hierarchy of people and organization, who reports to whom and their role. We took information from SonarQube, from Jira for all the bugs, and we married all this data together. And one thing we did was try to always build accountability at the developer level to show you what you really changed and how it affected the design or how it affected the build quality. And that accountability helped the developer understand where their role is in this quality gate that we have. So I'll take one more example specific about the vulnerability density, kind of like zoom on this one. We see in some of the application that we've onboarded lately, this camel humpback, the double humpback. You see, 1 month, the vulnerability density suddenly jumped. And that's easy to understand. This is a new application. It's onboarded for the first time. You're scanning it for the first time. You're gonna find tons of vulnerabilities, especially if it's a legacy app that you haven't really worked on for some time. Then your developers are energized. So they start remediating vulnerabilities. The density drops. How can you tell if that density dropped because of the vulnerability remediation? Or sometimes, for these legacy applications, there were a lot of that code that they just yanked out completely. Or there were some functions or projects out of the big application that nobody was using, and the older the application is, most likely it has the higher vulnerability density. So you have to understand what are the root cause for the increase or the decrease. And then even worse, when you see again another increase. And funny enough, and this is true story, I found one team trying to hide how many vulnerabilities they have because VPs, CIOs now are asking the question like, why is your security vulnerability density is high? So it kind of created this reaction where now some teams, they wanted to go the other direction. Don't show our dirty laundry. So the way they onboarded their application is that they took one project at a time, cleaned it up, added it, and then scanned it. Then they had another silo of additional projects. They worked on it, and they went and added it. So their density always almost stayed either constant or started decreasing. But still, we started seeing that the source code base was growing. Like, your density is fine, but you can see that every week, they're adding 10,000 line of code, additional line of code, right? So that's another indicator of the culture. Is it a culture of hiding our mistakes or saying, look, we know our problem and we're gonna fix it and we're working on it? And these are indicators. And on the other side, you can see some teams where after we got everything in place, you go and look at your organization, and you see that one VP has a bunch of directors, director has a bunch of managers, they all own one or more applications. But then you see that they peaked at one point, but there is a different manager where the density did not peak yet. It took like 2 or 3 months down the road. Again, you compare now peer group. Some took it as a priority. Some left it for 2 months later to go onboard their application. Now, again, you ask the question because sometimes there is a good reason. Sometimes they're just not bought in yet on this whole security initiative thing. Sometimes it's, look, I have business priorities. I have to ship. We had to put this on the back burner for a while to make sure our capacity is focused on meeting our business partners' requirements. But it doesn't hurt if you ask those questions and understand. Maybe the team, they're spread too thin. Maybe this is an application which is in production for a while now. It's in sustained engineering, doesn't have any additional development resources. But you as a manager, your responsibility is to make sure you're setting up your teams to succeed. If you want them all to onboard at the same time and focus on security, make sure they have that capacity, they have the resources. On that lower right corner, you see the frequency of the scans, how often they're doing the scans. And then the other line on the top is how many total scans they're doing. So if you look at their adding application, you see that wave. The more they add application, actually, they do less scans. And that's probably because there is a relationship. It's the same team that is onboarding the application and the same team that is scanning. So if you have limited capacity, you're saying either add more apps or go focus on scanning the same app over and over. And again, it's a problem for management to be aware of and fix. Now this one, it's a picture or a photo of a boomerang. We created this notion, an application, which we call Boomerang, or project called Boomerang. What happens is, in Fortify, you scan, you find these issues, and then 3 weeks later, somebody finds the vulnerability and decides it's time to triage the 150 issues that we have. The manager or the release manager, they'll go look at the vulnerability and they start assigning them around. And you get the vulnerability of your peer. It's not the vulnerability that you created. So what we did, we closed the loop between Fortify and the bugs. As soon as somebody checks in the code, we know who checked it in. We go automatically know that line number was introduced by developer A. Instantaneously, we assign it back to the developer. It hits them back in the neck, just like a boomerang. So this is where that instant feedback is increasing the accountability. Code scan, dynamic scan, same way. Make sure that they're scanning all the URLs that they have. Look at your logs from T-Leaf, Site Catalyst. If they tell you they scanned the app, did they scan 10% or 100%? Trust but verify. use the organizational hierarchy to go figure out where you have that problem. Is it individual? Is it team? Is it director? The extent. There are other things to look at, including the team. Are they trying to challenge and all go to be that leading team? Because that's where the money is, so they don't care about their peers. Are they mentoring, helping each other, or they're letting the people that fail stay behind? Again, that bell curve when you're compensating your teams is important to consider this as part of the culture. So final thought is look at your dashboard and ask the questions. That's what really gonna help your team succeed. Thank you all.